feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's and everything's
Fun.
Open wide for some soccer!
I don't care what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the
Call
Cowboys.
this college rule!
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. Dom and Chris here, and before we begin, as always, go watch our videos, like, share, follow, subscribe, everything on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, wherever podcasts are listened to. And we're out of our football block. We've been doing a couple of other episodes, and now today we're back on the diamond talking about one of the biggest what-ifs in MLB history.
I was going to say, this guy had such a interesting career because he started to dominate, and then it just kind of, we'll talk about it, stuff happened. We're talking about J.R. Richard from the Astros in this era where the Astros could have had the two best pitchers in the game.
Like the 80s might not have been the Dodgers' decade in the National League.
Yep.
It very well could have been the Astros.
Yep.
But we'll get into why
Yeah.
it wasn't. But J.R. Richard, born James Rodney Richard, March 7th in 1950 in Vienna, Louisiana. Not Austria, but Louisiana. They got a couple other ones out there. Parents Clayton and Lizzie. His dad was a lumber grader, and his mom was an elementary school cook. So lunch lady, I
Lunch
guess.
lady, yeah.
Exactly. He was a very large person.
Yeah,
to say the least.
He was always like the biggest kid in class, and yeah.
There was a story about when he was born. The joke was he was born on the 5th, 6th, and 7th of March.
That's great.
The amount of Demerol you would need to pass a child that big, holy cow.
That's a 15-pound turkey. What are we doing?
Put them all full of stuffing, I guess. I don't know. Always about sports, though, growing up. Always about sports. Played all of the sports, essentially. Always wanted to impress his dad.
Yeah.
As far as his athletic ability.
But really excelled at baseball, basketball.
Baseball, basketball, I did read, though, because by the end of high school, he is 6'8", 220 pounds, and is the team's champion quarterback.
Oh, yeah, I saw that too. But if him talking about it, he was like, football was never really like one of the options. It was basketball, baseball. And then if you look at his baseball career in high school, you're like, oh, yeah, I could see why he chose baseball.
A couple of football things I did want to bring up, though. He had a 65% completion percentage as a senior. He could throw the ball from his own 20 into the opposite end zone. And much like Norm Van Brocklin and Bobby Lane, an awesome punter. 67 yards a punt as a senior.
Isn't that crazy?
He could have done anything he wanted to. Basketball, obviously. He's like Charles Barkley, just in there destroying the paint at about 6'8". 35 points a game, 22 rebounds.
He was very highly recruited out of high school to play basketball, but then we get into what happens in his baseball career in high school, and you're like, okay.
So his idol was Bob Gibson, which, if you're in the 60s, that's a pretty good idol to have, especially if you're a pitcher. Also knew how to swing the bat like our buddy Fernando.
I thought that was cool.
Mm-hmm. In one game, he hit 4 home runs, the baseball equivalent of Al Bundy, and won 48-0 while I was on the mound.
Yeah, well, he was pitching. Just to be clear, he is a pitcher, and he cranked 4 home runs. In high school, he never gave up a run. In his senior year in high school.
That's ridiculous. This is like that, what was it? Sid Finch, like the fake SI baseball story.
Yep.
The guy who was like from Nepal who pitched with bare feet
boot
on. You had mentioned before he wanted to go to Grambling for basketball.
Yep.
They were very...
well, I saw there was like over 200 offers from colleges because they were like, this guy is such an athlete. Come play basketball. But he was like...
It could have been any sport. It would have been like, JR, you don't even need to know how to swim. You can stand in the pool.
Yep.
Just play water polo for us.
Just stand and...
Just block the goal with your wingspan. Play soccer. Just block the goal. But MLB scouts have finally started going down there as far as looking for talent. And in 1969, he's one of the most sought-after baseball prospects.
Oh, yeah.
In that year's draft, he was taken 2nd overall. And... JR had recalled, there were a lot of guys in my high school with as much ability as I had, but instead of training for it, they wanted to drink on Saturday nights.
Yep.
So he kind of saw that as his way out of what, was going on back at home. And Tal Smith, the player personnel director for the Astros, said, everyone in our organization, for that matter, and just about every organization, is high on him.
Yeah.
So he could have got number 1 to the Senators, but nope, goes number 2 to the Astros, and you're thinking, well, this is kind of a newer team, and maybe this could be our first star. And in 1969 in the Appalachian League, he starts 12 games and is as good as advertised and has really only 2 pitches.
And is a little wild.
He's quite Ricky Vaughn.
When we get into it, he definitely is that kind of joke pitcher from the baseball movies where they just have so much potential, but then you're like, he threw 4 wild pitches in that game.
Not if you do it colorfully, JR.
That's true.
Apparently one of his coaches said, we better teach this kid some control before he kills someone. So that first year, mind you, he's only 19. He goes 5-4 and has 11.14 strikeouts per 9 innings. That's dominant.
Yes.
That's just, it's either going to be a strikeout, a hit batsman, or a walk.
Yep.
Or if he grooves one down the middle and someone gets like even weak
Lucky.
contact, it goes out. He had a 6.59 ERA, though, but because it's the base runners he's putting on with his walks.
Oh, yeah, because he is high. He has high strikeouts, high walks, but I bet it's just very intimidating to hit against.
Oh, no. If you're a right-handed hitter and you
Yep.
see a guy throwing close to triple digits and then a slider, coming at high 80s, low 90s, Randy Johnson.
Yeah, Randy Johnson
Like you had
was
brought up
exactly,
before.
yes, who I thought of. I wouldn't dig in. I don't know where this one's going.
I'd just John Crockett and put the batting helmet backwards.
Yep.
When I got up there, I'm like, I'm looking to make contact. Then after the first pitch, I'm looking to live.
Yeah, I'm looking to live.
1970, he's with the Cocoa Astros of the Florida State League. Has a 2.39 ERA, which is pretty good.
So this is when it starts to look like, okay, because he's still 20. That's the other thing that I remember looking at these and I was like, oh, yeah, he's still a kid, but it's looking like the Astros are going to call him up and make him a part of this rotation.
And they just moved into the Astrodome. They're
Yep.
looking to kind of, here's our star, Major League Baseball. We got uniforms and everything.
Yes, exactly.
We're not the Colt 45s anymore.
Exactly.
That year, he threw a no-hitter against the Daytona Beach Dodgers. And 1971, they move him up to AAA.
Yep.
So like you said, they're kind of fast-tracking him with the Oklahoma City 89ers. Goes 12-7, 212 strikeouts in 173 innings pitched. What the hell? He's 21.
That's what I mean. So it's like it's all looking like it's all up for Millhouse or whatever the fuck. It's all
Everything's
coming up Millhouse because he does look like their best pitcher coming out of AAA. And when you look at his strikeouts per inning, you're just like, Jesus.
It's ridiculous.
Because he really, throughout his career, even in the minors, he's averaging 9, 10, 11 strikeouts per 9 innings, where you're like, that's like really good.
And it's almost like the Astros are like, not so much the Expos, but the Mariners with Randy Johnson at the beginning, where it's like, we can live with these walks.
Yep.
And because he's wild, he's scaring the shit out of everyone.
Yes.
So no one's digging in going like, well, if he throws me like a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, it doesn't move. I'm okay.
I'm okay. Yeah.
But if he's throwing one at my rib cage, well, I might not come back again.
If he pitches this slider a little inside, I'm screwed.
He tried the corner and missed, hit him
Yep.
right in between the eyes. His first start, because they call him up at the end of 71.
Yep.
September 5th. Strikes out 15 and wins the game.
And strikes out who 3 times?
Willie Mays. And what I'd found out through researching this, some of the most feared hitters of the 60s, 70s, and 80s who had faced him when he was in his prime were like, he was the hardest guy I ever faced.
Yes.
Like,
Unprompted saying that, being like, who do you think the hardest guy to hit off of was? And they would almost always be like J.R. Richard, because, like we were saying, it's hard to dig in and like be confident with what he's going to throw.
I love how you brought that up, though, because every response is off the dome.
Yes.
They don't have to sit and think about it. They're
Yes.
just like, oh, no, him.
Yes.
Him. He was the best, or he was the scariest. His next start, he gives up a leadoff homer to Pete Rose because Pete Rose fears no man and no barber.
So true.
Or bookie. He strikes out. He walks 6 in that game, but that year he goes 2-1 in his 4 starts, and you're thinking, they found a gem. They chose right. Enjoy Jeff Burrows, who did win an MVP later in Texas after the Senators
Yeah,
became
yeah.
the Rangers.
Yeah,
but
he
like,
won an NL MVP and was like RBI champ. So it wasn't like a bad pick, but you look at like JR coming through and you're like, oh, this is like on the verge of being like, this guy could be a Hall of Fame pitcher. Everybody shut up. Don't talk about it. Like, that's the way I felt. And I thought the Astros actually did a really good job of sending him back to the minors and like switching him back and forth because his control was always the issue. And they were like, dude, you get a little bit more control, you're going to be so much more dominant.
and he gets a little bit better every time he goes back to the minors.
Yep.
That they're not rushing him or destroying any. Not that he didn't have any confidence, but like you're not destroying his confidence by saying like, "Look, just stop walking people."
Yeah.
Like that's it. So in 72, he starts 19 games with Oklahoma City, has almost 12 strikeouts every 9 innings, and by July 30th, they call him up for a doubleheader start against the Padres, but he only pitches 4 games that year, like you had said. In 73, it's almost the same thing. He's now in AAA Denver, but they're still bringing him up after these minor league stints.
Was 73 when they tried to see if he was a relief pitcher? Because they tried to do that for just a short window.
Yeah.
Because I bet they were like, dude, if you go out every day and just pitch 3 innings, we're going to love you for it. But
and he would be that dominant closer, because this was a time when closers wouldn't just get 3 outs.
that's what I mean. It's 3 innings or what? It's literally closing the game of, yeah.
It's like the Goose Gossage or Bruce Sutter or Lee Smith, where it's like, well, our starter went 7 2/3. You want to help us out?
Exactly. No, exactly. So they tried him out at that. I think it was 73. But then I saw something that was interesting because this is when he really started to like find his rhythm. And then he got sent back down in 74. And he said this to reporters that he goes, I feel like I should be in the starting rotation. And I feel like it's because of race that I'm not. And then you're like, you play in Texas.
Yeah, I mean, number one, like, what did we discuss in our Clyde Drexler episode? Who was sending those death threats to Guy Morris?
Yes.
Or Guy Lewis? Like,
Guy-
yeah. But, you know, what was it you had said? 10,000 times?
Yeah.
10,000 times before you get it right? It's a letter city, Chris. It's a letter city. But like you had said in 74, he does really well. They actually sent him back to AA and AAA that year.
Yeah.
To kind of get the. But then again, if you're a major league organization, your ace can't be walking 8 guys a game.
No. It's
You can't have that. I think it's a little of column A and column B, as we discussed.
Yep.
Because, you know, it's a lot of walks.
and they just knew that if he could get his control just a little bit more on, he would be that elite pitcher.
75, he has a little bit of help as far as because they experienced some crappiness from off-season acquisitions and deaths.
I was just
don't know
going
if
to
you
say,
read
because
that.
they trade one of their starters thinking that they're going to have Don Wilson, and then Don Wilson dies of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Yeah.
And then they were just like, hey, JR, we know we weren't going to have you as a starter, but we need you as a starter.
You want to eat innings and put the fear of God into the National League?
Yep.
So he goes 12-10 that year. And mind you, he's only 25, so it's not like...
Yeah, this is what I mean. This is why I actually liked these years coming up, because they really worked on him. And then you see 75 to like 80, he becomes this pitcher that everybody was saying that he could be.
31 starts that year, 7 complete games and a shutout. 176 strikeouts, but led the league in walks. Wild pitches.
I was just going to say walks and wild pitches.
But this was his arrival for Houston. It's like we finally got our guy.
Yep.
Almost not necessarily like we wanted it to go this way, but he's here. He's here.
76, it's really what people say is his breakout season. And I still can't believe how many games guys pitch back in this day.
Yeah.
In this era, he goes 20-15 with 14 complete games. Pitchers nowadays don't have 14 complete games in their career.
Grover Cleveland Alexander would have been like, 14? What are you, a pussy?
Yes, exactly. Why are they bringing you out all those games?
JR, you want some of what's in this flask? It's my talent juice. And it makes the voices go away. Oh, God. But yeah, 20-15, which is crazy. He was the second Astros pitcher ever to 20 wins.
To 20
after
wins, yep.
Almost Mr. Astro, Larry Derker, from back in the day. And he was the, did you read anything about the Black Aces?
Yeah. He became the 9th member of the 200 strikeout whatever. Crew, I was going to say crew,
20 win club.
20 win
Yeah.
club. Yeah, yeah. Was it 21 and 200 strikeout or just 20
I think
win?
it was just 20.
Okay.
20 wins. But yeah, 214 Ks. He led also NL pitchers with 14 hits and 9 RBIs, which, he had that Al Bundy game in high school. You're thinking just Louisiana. No, he is a legitimate threat to hit it deep.
But it's such a great asset to your team when you put your pitcher up and you're like, no, he could get a hit. He could get a triple. He's not Frank Thomas.
He's got.
He could do this.
He can hit it in the gap and leg it out.
Well,
He's 6'8". Those strides had to be just ridiculous. Next year, he leads Houston in wins, starts complete games, only 104 walks. This was kind of the year he found more of his control.
Yep. Still top of the league in wild pitches, but walks were down.
Yeah, well, wild pitches just instill fear. That's just
true.
1 ball. Walks are 4 balls.
Throw it at the bull. What?
Just throw it at the bull.
Trust me.
Do you think when he was in the Florida State League, Tim Robbins' grandma was there? I'm assuming that was when she first started coming up,
That's
right?
so true.
JR might have been the first. First taking that number there in line. Right. 20 for 87 is a hitter. 2 dingers. Oh my God.
It's so good.
He did finish that year with 2 complete games against the Braves and Dodgers.
Yeah.
So this is when stuff is not only for him, but for Houston starting to come together, that they're a legitimate threat in the NL West. And then in 78, now we get into 2 of the most dominant seasons by a right-handed pitcher in the 1970s.
And this is you start, because again, he's 27. So you start thinking this could be a Hall of Fame career, because in 78, he has over 300 strikeouts.
It's unbelievable.
Breaks all of the Astros records. And then I love this. In the game that he pitched his 300th strikeout, he got his 7th career home run. And you're just like, yes, he's such an amazing athlete. He goes 18 and 11 in that. And I remember thinking, I was like, the Astros are on the verge of putting this together.
Oh, yeah. No, they're started developing talent and acquiring. I mean, they're not the Dodgers yet.
No.
But they're starting to kind of come up behind them. And I did want to add, though, that year, because as we talked about in our Steve Avery and our Fernando episodes, 275.1 innings pitched.
Yep.
He is a finisher pitcher, Chris. He does not simply start games.
And he's without a doubt their number 1. Every time they need a win, they're like, all right, we're going to put JR in.
There was a game in his second start of 79, though. This is a typical J.R. Richard game. 13 strikeouts, 6 wild pitches, and a 2-1 win.
Yep.
God.
Yep. That's pretty accurate.
That's the J.R. Richard special.
Can you imagine being his catcher?
Oh, God.
He must have had mental breakdowns every time.
I would have just pulled the Jake Taylor to everyone. What was he doing with her panties on his head? What? And then it hits him in the dome.
Hell of a dancer.
We must be very, very proud. The All-Star break, though, he's only 7-10, but he still has 158 strikeouts. Mm-hmm. Then he just starts reeling them off in the second half of the year. And quite possibly one of the most ridiculous runs for a pitcher in the National League. 9 straight complete games. 86 straight innings without a relief pitcher used. What the hell?
And they said his strikeout percentage went up so much in this second half of the season, essentially, that it was almost like 2 different pitchers, because it was, like you were saying, that this block of games is so ridiculous that the next year makes it even sadder.
Yeah, so I did want to add he was player of the month that September.
Yep.
4-1 with a 1.24 ERA, 18 wins, 2.71 ERA. He had 10 plus strikeouts in 14 starts.
So good.
He's got 313. So back-to-back 300 strikeout seasons.
Back-to-back.
Only 2 other guys to do that I had read. Sandy Koufax, Nolan Ryan.
Who's showing up.
He had the best hits per 9 innings in the NL, and it was his first sub-100 walk season.
I know. So he's getting that under control.
Oh, God. You know how many innings he pitched, though? 292.1.
Wow. That's crazy.
Oh, man. October.
9 consecutive complete games. I mean, what the hell?
So October 11th that year, he signs a 4-year deal with Houston. Heading into 1980, Houston's ready to challenge the Dodgers, and they sign Nolan Ryan, which is, oh my God, here we go.
Yeah.
The two best power pitchers in Major League Baseball are on the same staff.
Well, I was thinking of like another team because it's not like when Schilling and Johnson
Yeah.
go to the Diamondbacks because Schilling's not a power pitcher. This is like having two Randy Johnsons on the mound.
Exactly. Like, don't get me wrong, Schilling was a good strikeout
No,
guy,
but he
he's
wasn't-
not dominant.
Yes.
He had that sinker that would always weak contact guys. But yeah, nothing like this ever.
The far right sinker is
The
what they're-
far right
is
sinker.
what
It
they're
always
called.
leans right.
Always
It
does.
always leans right and then gets in trouble on social media and the umpire doesn't know what to do but he starts 1980 like the best, not only pitcher in baseball, the best player in baseball.
Yep.
5 straight wins, a sub-2 ERA, player of the month in April, and he broke Durker's team strikeouts record already. This is like maybe 4.5 seasons of actually starting.
I was going to say 4 like complete seasons as him in the rotation as a starter.
It was unbelievable. He went to the end of the All-Star break, 10-4, 1.96 ERA, and was a starter in the All-Star game.
Yep.
And then we get to what happens after the All-Star game, and it's kind of
It's tragic.
It's
It
very
100%
tragic.
is, especially the way the organization and the media portrayed him for when this was happening.
I mean, it's Houston, Chris.
It's Houston.
It's Houston. So July 14th against the Braves, he had complained about barely being able to see catcher Alan Ashby's signs, and he had trouble moving his arm and numbness in his fingers, which led to an inability to grip the ball, which is like, oh God, if he's throwing smoke, we're all fucked.
Yes.
Like, very scary. So they put him on the 21-day DL, and what ends up happening after that is my arm doesn't work, and he checks into Houston Methodist Hospital for basically, I don't know what's wrong with me, but
Yes, there's something wrong.
The media's saying there's nothing wrong with me.
That was the thing. The Astros were almost like, he'll be back. He just needs a quick break. The media's like, he's super jealous of Nolan Ryan's contract and he's making the Astros pay for it. And you're just like, from his perspective, he's like, I can't feel my fingertips. I don't know what the hell they're talking about.
These are kind of important to my life.
Yes.
Like,
I hated that so much, especially what happens next, because he goes to the hospital and they're like, they check him out and they're like, yeah, your blood pressure in your left arm is completely normal. In your right arm, it's almost not there.
yeah,
Like
it was obstructed. There was what I had to ask Jen for this one: distal subclavian and axillary arteries in his right arm.
Yep.
Which cuts off all the blood flow. And if you're not getting blood,
then you're fucked.
you could die.
Yeah.
So on July 25th that year, the arteries in his neck were studied, and they ended up opting not for surgery.
Yeah, because
out
they
the
said
gate.
it didn't look whatever clotted. You know what I mean? It looked like it was fine, but like you could tell it wasn't.
He had gone to a chiropractor after that to rotate his neck and fix the blood flow in his upper torso.
Yep.
But what ended up happening on July 30th, he collapsed in the outfield from a stroke.
Well, he said this is the report. It was he showed up to the Astrodome and he was like, I feel like I got like a headache. I feel like out of it was what he was saying. And then he's in the outfield and I think they were just playing catch and he just goes, I couldn't see the ball coming.
Oh, God.
And then he's literally like, the next thing I knew, I just collapsed. And you were like, oh, yeah, that's crazy. They rush him to the hospital and they're like, these are like serious blood clots. And he had what they called not a stroke, but a major stroke.
It was 3 separate strokes.
Yes.
That they eventually diagnosed him with. And I'm sure the Astros in the press box were just like, he's faking it.
Exactly.
Like,
I could almost imagine them saying that, which is so ridiculous.
oh, God. So he's iced for the year.
Yep.
And the saddest part is, in 1980, they win the NL West. They play in that famous NLCS against the Phillies, where every game, 4 of the 5 games went to extra innings.
Yep. Could you even imagine if they had their number 1? I mean, maybe number 2 with Nolan, but still, it's like
they win,
and he was dominating.
They would have won the World Series that year.
Yes,
I maintain if he plays the entire year.
I think so.
Because in 4 of those games of the 5, you get Richard and Ryan, and then in the World Series, you get them at least 4 out of 7, maybe 5 if you start one in game 1.
Yep.
So, good Lord.
I know. It's sad.
81, he goes into a rehab program, and by September, he's active, but they decide not to use him.
So he comes back into AAA, which he knows very well. But they said his reaction time was so much slower after the strokes that if somebody hit a ball back to him, it was almost like you could see how slow his reaction was. It was like,
oh God,
like it really was that stroke that did it to him. Obviously,
well, I mean. But he's faking it, Chris.
That's true.
He's
At this point, he
it,
is.
Because everyone in the Astros is a doctor. They have their doctorates in student athletes,
That's
if you know
true.
what I mean. So 82, he ends up playing in a single spring training game, and then they extend him for the next couple months. So he's still pitching.
Mm-hmm.
He ends up starting 7 games, but nothing comes of it. He makes it up to AAA Tucson, but doesn't make it back to the Astros.
No, and that's what they said. It just... He wasn't the same person after he had these strokes, which obviously you guys really screwed him over with that one.
Man, you should have sent him to the doctor maybe when he said, my fingers, Happy Gilmore, my fingers hurt.
Well, now your back's going to hurt because you're going to be running laps.
You just pulled landscape. Oh, no, you had strokes.
It's such a ridiculous thing now looking at it for someone to be like, my vision's going bad and I'm getting numbness, where they would be like, we're going to the hospital right now. Back then, they were like, all right, buddy, we'll look at your contract next year.
Oh, my God.
Like, it's so ridiculously bad, but that was the era of run it off.
Who in their right mind, though, would go, if your best player says, I don't feel right, to go, well, you're just mad about your contract.
Yes, exactly.
Do you have a doctor's note? I can't get a doctor's note if I'm passed out in center field at the Astrodome. I don't want to laugh, but it's like, how could you be this cruel?
I know, and just stupid with this asset that you have.
Oh,
if that makes sense too, from like a business perspective, where you're like, we have literally the 1-2 combo that could win us a World Series. He's complaining about something, and you're just like, yeah, I mean, walk it off. What do you want from us? What do you want? You want ice? You want ice your fingers? I don't know if that's going to work.
How about laps? What?
Yeah.
A whole side of your body's numb? How about laps?
JR comes in. I'm not feeling good today. Take a lap.
What was it? The King of the Hill. Take a salt tablet.
Take a salt tablet.
The one starring Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Oh, God.
But wow, Bobby, you could be in the Rockettes. Ew! We just watched that episode.
Oh, that's great.
God. So, 1983, he's starting to have pain in his calf, so he has to have another surgical bypass. Was even a free agent, but they end up bringing him back for 84. But after 2 months, they end up releasing him, and he never pitches in Major League Baseball or even in the minors again.
Yep.
That's tragic.
It really is sad.
And if you thought that was bad, wait until what happens after his baseball career. It's even more depressing.
Well, after his baseball career, he does have a good amount of money from pitching and being like a starting pitcher. But then, and this is the era of this happening.
Oh, yes, it
is.
is.
He gets scammed, he has bad investments, and he gets divorced twice.
Yeah, which you just can't have. He lost over $1 million just to those things.
Yep.
Which is...
And his Houston home, and like it's literally one of the more tragic stories, because then we get to 90s where he's a homeless man living under the I forgot the Houston
highway overpass.
The highway overpass in Houston. So he's like literally a homeless man out there after being the best pitcher in Houston for like 5 years.
He was the toast of Houston by 79.
Yeah.
Like if you had told any organization after that 79 season, you can pick one starting pitcher to start your franchise with, due to his age, due to his effectiveness, due to what you thought was going to happen.
Yep.
Everyone would say fucking J.R. Richard.
Yep.
Every single person would say it, and no one would laugh at you. But I did want to add, in 1989, he does go to that senior league, which Doc Ellis was a part of.
Oh, yes. Yes, he does.
He pitched for the Orlando Juice.
And he ends up getting his MLB pension at this point. So he was like kind of waiting for that. Gets really involved with a church and kind of turns his life around, because it really, when you look at it, like late 80s when he's homeless, or like early 90s, in that time where you're just like, what happened? How are the Houston Astros not picking up this slack?
Just like, hey, JR, we found you an apartment. Do you want, like, just, you could even be the janitor at the Astrodome.
Exactly.
Like, we'll pay your rent. Like, you've meant so much to this organization. And they're just like, no, he's got his pension 10 years from now.
Exactly.
Like, enjoy living under Highway 59, JR.
We're going to make you food and drink director, and then when your application gets to the top, we'll just change it and goes right back to the bottom.
Yeah, god damn.
It's like Casino, you guys.
Oh, no. Oh.
But seriously, this was what
I'm surprised they didn't take him out to a cornfield and murder him. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
The way they treated him was horribly.
Yeah.
But like you said, he found, a church and really turned his life around. In 2018, he was part of the Hall of Game legacy of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, which I thought was pretty awesome. Do you know that people are remembering him? They're remembering him for him, the pitcher, not what happened as far as his injury and then just disappearing.
Exactly. They're remembering those like 4 or 5 years where he was. I think he was third in the Cy Young twice, or it was something like that, where it was like he was such a great pitcher. And then I remember reading this where they were like, he probably would have won 2 or 3 Cy Youngs if he just could keep like 80 walkouts or 80 walks for the season. But it was always like 140 walks this season.
Well, and the Astros from like 79 to about 86, they were a really good baseball team.
Yep.
That you keep him and Nolan Ryan at the top.
They would have. Like you were saying, in a 7-game series, having both of those guys would be almost unbeatable.
That's such an advantage I think people overlook. And even in that Philly series where it's 5 games, you got to go through them twice.
Exactly.
A piece,
yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Like, can you even imagine? You're just like, dude, we had Nolan Ryan tonight. Who's tomorrow? J.R. Richard. Oh my God.
It's like, oh, that's bad. We have J.R. Richard next. Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy.
So the bats aren't getting woken up in these games. So one whole chicken, just like you said. It's not going to help, Skip. It's not going to help against this bastard.
One whole chicken, just like you said, man. I love that scene.
So he finished his career with 107 wins, 3.15 ERA, and 221 starts. 76 complete games, 19 shutouts, but over the 221 starts, he had 1,606 innings pitched. That's a horse, man.
Yes.
Almost 1,500 strikeouts, an all-star, an ERA title. I mean, what could have been? What could have been with this guy? That's why I wanted to do this episode, because a lot of baseball fans who didn't see him in this window kind of don't know who he is.
And you can see he was going into his prime. Back-to-back 300 strikeout seasons into 1980, where he literally is having like a similar type of season, and then it's just so ridiculous that the Astros treated him the way they did. And this was what sports franchises kind of did in this era, where they were just like, yeah, we get it. Like, you want a new contract. We'll figure it out.
Normally, you just hold out. You don't go, oh, my God, I can't feel half of my body right now. Normally, you're just like, well, I'm not going to pitch because you didn't give me. No, that's generally how these start.
Not,
I'm going to die if you don't help me.
I'm having a stroke.
Are you?
Are you?
Are you?
Are you looking to stroke that pen on a new contract? Tell us.
It's like, I think I broke my ankle. You could still move it, but it's like, I think I'm having a stroke. You're drooling. You're fine. No!
Yeah. Oh.
What was I going to say? Recently he just died, though.
Yeah,
the last
died
few years. August 4th, 2021 at 71. Died of COVID, actually, which extremely tragic because he had started turning his life around, and he also started telling his story.
Yes,
Which I think is important because without that narrative, all you're going to read about is the Houston front office and even some teammates thinking, as Jack Clark said, he's jaking it.
Yes, exactly.
Which isn't fair.
I know.
So I'm glad that he at least had that and that, retribution at the end where it's like, he deserves to be remembered. He was that good. He was that special of a player.
Yes.
And
And was taken away from him. His career was taken away from him.
And he's not the only player to have his career robbed
No.
of injuries, but everything that went down with it, and then just, some guys, it's like, oh, I blew my arm out. Now I'm an athletic director.
Yes.
And I don't know, it's just very sad, but you also want to remember the good with J.R. Richard because he was good. He was,
dominant.
Probably would have been a Hall of Famer if he pitches in the. Fernando doesn't get all those silver bats.
Yeah,
I can guarantee that.
That's actually really true. That's really true. I didn't even think about
He
that.
probably would have played him in the playoffs.
Well, the Astros said they would have believed him more if he had just banged it out on a couple of trash cans and been like, I'm having a stroke. And they would have been like, all right, listen.
God. Oh, no.
Became a minister at the end of his life. Like you were saying, was out telling his story to like baseball camps and stuff like that, which was really great. And then, died 2021, which was sad. But if you ever watch him pitch,
oh, my God.
it really is one of those like intimidating things where you're like, as a regular person, you're like, I wouldn't even step in the box.
I'm just going to pull the John Kruk and hope that I live. I don't want to make contact.
That's what I mean.
I'm going up there with a diaper on.
Yes, seriously.
But J.R. Richard, always remember him. Great guy. Go watch his highlights on YouTube. Dude was a stud.